few words from our new state representative, Mike Ebert, and he's going to let us know a few things about what's going on in Montpelier. So let's hear it for Mike Ebert.
From the gathering, it looks like people heard that Tim expected me to speak for a half hour. I will talk very slow. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for allowing me to serve you in Montpelier. It's always exciting and it's a great time. If you notice this year I had no handouts because all last week, every time I wrote the handout, everything changed. Montpelier is in total flux right now. People don't know what's going on. There's so many tax bills out there, and there's so many people looking for funding for different programs and initiating new programs that on a day-to-day basis, everything changes. So there is no report. The one I had last evening, I threw away this morning when I heard the governor talk about he's reversing his position possibly on no broad-based taxes. So I said, well, there goes that part of it. And I was also somewhat confused by his statement about no broad-based taxes. Can you hear me now? Is that better? Yeah. The no broad-based tax thing, because we're increasing the gasoline tax, we're increasing the property tax, we're increasing numerous taxes and creating a good deal of other taxes. Actually, I probably shouldn't say we, because I'm not voting for any of those things. But, to start with, I was surprised this morning also to see the headline that my bill got so much play today. Following the incident that happened in Windham County and our schools were on lockdown and stuff, I talked to some local officials, the chair of our school board select board, the sheriff and some state police officers and things, and found out that there's very little that the police can do when someone threatens a school or is in crisis, emotional or mental crisis. All they can actually do is sit with the person unless they want to go with them voluntarily to the hospital. So the intent of my bill is that if a police officer, let me use the example, if I were laying outside of 142 bleeding, the police officer would come and take me to the hospital for treatment. Now if I was running around on the side of the road, behaving crazily, ripping my clothes off, whatever, or throwing things at cars, the police officer could come, and obviously I'm under some emotional duress. He can't do much about it except to sit me in the cruiser and wait for a judge to issue a warrant to bring me in for treatment. That's what this bill is about. One part of it is to allow the officers with special training to make the determination that yes, there is a mental issue going on and take you to the hospital for emergency care. And one of the things, it's kind of a parity thing. For years we've said we want mental health and physical health to be on parity. You want people to look at mental health as a health issue, not some kind of plague or something. You want them to recognize that these are treatable diseases. So it's about time that we treat them equally. The other portion of the bill is the criminal threatening portion, which I assumed if you threatened a school that the police would arrest you. But unless you actually do something physical, or if I were going to threaten this gentleman, I could stand here and threaten him all evening until the point where I either took out a weapon or made a fist. The police really can't do much to me except maybe a disorderly conduct. So this is to strengthen those things and add a layer of protection to our schools. And so hopefully it starts a conversation. I think a lot of people are going to weigh in on it. I know the mental health community is going to be nervous. They don't want people being picked up. And one of the issues that we discussed at great length was if someone is demonstrating, I won't use the plant, I'll use the Brattleboro, somebody's at a demonstration in Brattleboro and it's not popular, could the police say, oh, you know, you're behaving erratically and taking it away? And that's not the intent. Those are the types of questions we had asked. I alluded before to a fuel increase tax. What's happened, like many consumption taxes, as we conserve, it costs us money. Because what's happened is now we're getting better fuel economy, the price of gas is up, people are traveling less miles, and avoiding using their car as much as possible. So what's happened is we have a $30 million shortfall in the revenue on gas, on the gas tax. So the governor and the transportation folks decided that what we're going to do is lower the gas tax by 9 cents. And then we're going to add a sales tax to it. Essentially it's a sales tax of 4%. So what's going to happen is in the net, the gas tax is going to go up 6.7 cents. But the real problem I have with it is going to be an indexed tax. So what's going to happen is whenever the price of gas goes up, the tax automatically goes up with it. So it can continue to rise for as long as gas prices go up, but it will have a floor, so it can only come down so far. So we're going to see a significant increase in our gasoline taxes. We have not addressed the issue of the $240 million shortfall in the transportation budget itself because of what's going on in Waterbury. A lot of funds have been removed from different departments and things. In transportation, we'll see a shortfall of $240 million for the next 3 years. So they're looking at some funding mechanism for that. Waterbury is a big problem. FEMA, the governor assumed FEMA was going to pay a lot more than it had. And while I do criticize the governor frequently, I must say in this instance, FEMA said we would meet this obligation, and then as time went on, they kind of backed away from their obligation. So I can't lay that totally on the governor's doorstep. But I am concerned that some of the things we're doing to rebuild the Waterbury facilities could be put off with long-term bonding rather than increased taxes. And at this point, there's a great concern that we're going to somehow harm our bond rating, so they don't want to bond. So we're going to see shifting of funds and taxes changing. One of the things that occurred was the Forest Parks and Recreation had a $900,000 reduction in their budget. So the Sweet Pond thing that I've been working on has been put on hold for a couple of years. Fortunately, I've been working closely with Commissioner Schneider and Secretary Markowitz, so they're willing to keep dam safety from, and that's DAM safety, from closing down the dam for a couple of years. So that's going to stay in the queue. There are some other things that are coming down the pike. One being, I'm sure most of you have heard of the sugar tax. Essentially what it is, it's sugary drinks. We'll use Diet Coke for an example. It's going to be a penny an ounce on those products. Needless to say, the businesses on the Connecticut River are quite concerned, as are the businesses on the New York border. If you're in Chittenden County, you're kind of trapped, but the other folks can go across the border. So essentially what that would do is if we went to buy a case of soda, and it was 20-ounce bottles, $4.80 extra for a case. So that's going to encourage people to go across the river. One of the things that they're contemplating in the bill is that the retailer won't have to show that price. He can just spread it out among his other products, so you won't even notice, but you're going to be paying that tax. And that tax is going to be used to help fund the healthcare system. And I have a serious problem with doing that because, like gas tax, and like when we raise the alcohol tax and tobacco tax, what you find happening is those are taxes that the revenues eventually start declining as people start consuming less, because that's what you're trying to encourage them to do, or driving across the Hinsdale or Chesterfield, the state revenues fall. So then you need another source of revenue to support those programs you started with that money.
Mike?
Yes?
Can I ask a question?
Sure. Please.
Is that going to include fountain? If the sweet tax passes, will that include fountain drinks as well? And how are they going to make that work?
It will be on bottled drinks. If you go to McDonald's and buy a soda out of the dispenser, it will not. One of the questions that came up is if I go to Dunkin' Donuts and I get 2 sugars in my coffee, will Dunkin' Donuts charge me the tax based on the sugar? That's a question that has yet to be answered because they're thinking they might be able to because they'll know the quantity of sugar. So that is another thing that's in flux. We're not sure where it's going to land, but we do know that sugary drinks, soda, the energy drinks that kids drink, you know, the kids at the Gatorade and basketball games, things like that, all of those would be subject to the tax. Yes, sir.
Why stop at soda? Why not Ben & Jerry's ice cream, Vermont maple syrup?
That's next year.
All that.
They're already talking, they didn't want to press too hard because they are talking about a junk food tax. And they're throwing out all kinds of numbers, different percentages and stuff, but they certainly are looking at that. There is not a taxable item or a stone going to be unturned to get money because the state is in desperate need of money. We just found out last week that LIHEAP, which is the low-income heating assistance program for the state, has a $900,000 shortfall to make it through the rest of the winter. So now they're going to try and backfill that hole, and that'll probably be money that will come out of transportation or some other fund, and then they'll have to backfill that. So we are in serious crisis. Another tax that got a very cool reception, especially from our veterans, was the break open ticket tax. Do people know what break open tickets are?
No.
No. Okay. If you've ever been to the Legion or to the VFW or any place like that, fraternal organization, they have these little tickets that you break open, you buy them for $1, and you can win a prize. And they want to tax those tickets 10%. And the problem is they're not taxing the sale of tickets, they're taxing the purchase of the ticket by the fraternal organization. So what happens is when we use 200 tickets as the box number, there's significantly more than that. But you would have to pay $20 on your box. Well, in the box that you've paid $200 for, and people are going to pay you for those tickets, there's a certain number of prizes. So as it all filters down, and actually it's about $2,500 a box, as it all filters down, the VFW or the Legion or whoever, if they figure they don't sell about 400 tickets in the box, because once all the prizes are sold, nobody's going to buy any more tickets. And people are astute enough to know that the prizes are gone. So they throw away a considerable amount of the box. So they probably make about $200 on a box of ticket sales. Well, they're going to be paying a $250 tax. So those sales of tickets will not last for a long time. So to be thinking of funding thermal efficiency with that type of tax is a little short-sighted, to say the least. But again, they are exploring every avenue of taxation. And for my friends and farmers in the room, you'll be gratified to know that that $900 that was cut from Parks and Recreation, $900,000 from Parks and Recreation, the first thought was to take anyone with current use that had forest land in current use, charge them 94 cents an acre for their land that was in current use that was in forest. Fortunately, that also received a very cool reception and does not seem to be, it's not dead, but it's on life support, so hopefully that won't come about. Those of us that thought about it, it's kind of a bizarre thing. You're going to give someone a tax break on the property and then tax it. We just couldn't figure that one out. So, and again, there are just so many different programs and taxes that are needed. Right now, the state's looking for $17 million, $5 million for the Clean Energy Development Fund, which used to be paid by BY. And when March came, the obligation for BY ended. The state tried to impose a special tax on BY to continue with the Clean Energy Development Fund. Unfortunately, we were able to stop that from happening. So now they're looking for $5 million to put in the Clean Energy Development Fund. LIHEAP, next year, they're going to need $6 million for that because the Fed is cutting back on the amount of LIHEAP money. And then on thermal efficiency, they need another $6 million, and that's where the idea of break open tickets. They thought they would get $6 million to break open tickets. So, all in all, we are facing some very difficult economic times, and there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of desire to take serious looks at cuts. Our property tax on statewide is about 5 cents on the statewide property tax. Some towns pay more, some towns pay less. There's a lot of factors that play into it. But there were some of us that were a bit annoyed with that because there could have been other things done rather than put it upon the towns. And when they fail to transfer money from the general fund into the ed fund, we still need that money. So what happens, the state doesn't meet their obligation, so guess who has to pick up the tab? The local share. So we're very concerned about that. And on that 5 cents, one of the first things we said was you had $27 million in general fund that you didn't transfer over. That translates to 2.7 cents on that tax rate. So we could have saved 2.7 cents without any effort whatsoever. The representative from Stowe put forth a motion on the floor to repeal Act 1668 and develop a new taxing system. It got great bipartisan support and created great panic in the administration. So on Tuesday, that bill came out on the floor and there was good support for it. Well, on Wednesday, the supporter, I guess maybe not supporters of Act 16, but the supporters of the administration came with an amendment to that. That yes, we need to replace Act 1668. They have failed. They're not working. As Patty said 14 years ago, someday they will not work. And Patty, myself, and Laura DiVincente's, our argument was not someday, the day they implemented it wasn't going to work, and it didn't right from the start. But what they did is they said, yes, we recognize there's a serious problem, so we're going to have to study. Her bill would have made the change take place in 2015. They would have had to have something in place in 2015. Instead, we're going to start a study in 2014, and the report doesn't have to come back till 2015. It's the seventh time they've looked at it. Yeah, so you know there's some serious problems going on. Yes.
Is there any discussion in the legislature about Vernon still enjoys half the statewide tax? But I was concerned that once this whole thing with entity not having to pay, you know, and all of the contracts the state has Entity are done. So I haven't been there obviously in 3 years. I don't really know what's going on with Entity as far as their taxes. But has there been any discussion about taking away Vernon's half statewide property tax?
There has been some preliminary discussion, but it hasn't gone anywhere.
Is that something we should maybe have the lobbyists be very aware of so that...
Yeah, I think that is, but a reminder call would not be a bad idea. Because that's exactly the type of thing that
Absolutely.
that we have in services for.
Every household in this town.
Oh, yeah. And our property share is creeping up. I mean, we don't have the deal that we once had. It's not as good as it once was. But we still have the best deal in the state of taxes. Which, part of the problem is there's a lot of people that are jealous about that and hold it against Vernon. And in some quarters, they hold it against someone else in this room other than me, who served in the legislature. I won't mention any names, chair of the select board. When you talk to my committee,
As long as I don't have to pay as much in property taxes, they can hold anything they want against me.
when you talk in my committee about VY and you talk about fairness of process, there are a couple members of the committee that are not remiss about taking Patty's name in vain. And I think at times she had some go-rounds with the chair of the committee, and one of them, which is legendary, occurred on the floor of the House. And Patty, I know none of you would ever believe this, but Patty spoke up and broke protocol and
He lied. You don't lie in the State House.
made some insinuations that he wasn't quite being as forthright as he could, or whatever. But
I just said not
right, people talk about that still.
the 1970s.
Patty ruffled a few feathers while she was there, but even those folks recognized that she was a good legislator and that she did good work. But a lot of what we have here in Vernon was because of the work that she did with Ted. And that work continues, and I'm continuing that work, and we hope to keep getting those good deals for Vernon. But again, we have to be ever vigilant about what is going on in the State House. You know, we're at a point now where we have a little over $5 billion budget in the state, and human services is almost 44% of that budget. And we have grown human services so much. And as we, not restrict, but we don't encourage business to thrive in the state as much as they should, those roles are only going to increase. We're going to put more people out of work, and we're going to have more need for human services and social services. So that is going to be something that's going to keep spiraling, I think, out of control. Some of the interesting things that also occur with the LIHEAP program. I had a lady from Vernon call me and say, I got my LIHEAP voucher this year. I said, oh, good. That's good. I'm glad they're helping you. She said, yes, it was $3. And I said, for what? It was $3 for the year. It's not a big help. And my first thought was, how much did it cost us to process that $3 check to give to this lady? Because it wasn't done electronically into her bank account. It was a check. So it was quite fortuitous because 2 days later, the director of LIHEAP was before our committee asking for money. So I took the opportunity to ask him why that happened. And it was quite interesting. He said, because people that are receiving 3 squares food stamps, if they're getting LIHEAP, they get 30% more in food stamps. So what they've done is there's a lot of people in the state, 16,000 actually, that they'll send a voucher of $3 or $5 to, so that they can get a 30% increase in their food stamps. We all reacted that this is kind of like gaming the system, but this is the way the Fed has it set up. So we have requested that our delegation, congressional delegation, take a look at that. And we asked how much would that be in actual LIHEAP dollars to other people. So you know, you figure out the math. $3 or $5 and 16,000 people, that's a lot of money that we can actually be helping people that need fuel assistance. So we are looking into that. So that was something that when we found it out, there's something we can possibly do about that. But I think it's kind of tragic that you have to game the system to get people the food stamps that they need and should have. So there's a lot of that goes on. And the thing about broad-based taxes still boggles my mind, because all the taxes I just talked about here, how many of you would think that those are broad-based taxes because they impact a tremendous number of people, probably most of the population? I would think so. Obviously, the governor doesn't. He thinks it's sales or income tax. So now that he's thinking about reconsidering those, on top of the 120 some odd million new taxes that have been proposed, we may see some other things coming from the administration. I mean, we are in desperate financial straits. So whenever you talk to your representative, or any representative, or your senators, remind them that we should be talking about ways that we can also conserve funds, ways that we can also reduce some of our spending and get a handle on what it is that we're doing. There have been some creative thoughts. In the Transportation Committee, they were reviewing mileage that people get that work for the state. We'll take like the dam safety officer who drives around state examining dams. Well, he gets paid for his mileage from his own vehicle. And some of those people get as much as $18,000 and $19,000 a year in mileage. So what they're thinking is maybe it would be cheaper to give them a fleet vehicle and let them use the state vehicles. So there are some people looking at ways of saving, but we're not looking deep enough or fast enough. So I don't want to be the bearer of all bad news, but that's where we are in the state. Yes, in that. No, behind you. Yeah, up first. We are killing a half hour. This is great. I was worried that Patty and I were going to have to sing and dance.
Well, I knew you could talk for a half hour.
So did Deb.
Mike, I got a couple questions.
Sure.
First of all, the first one is this penny on the ounce of the sugar drinks. Okay, now they're going to be attacking the people from the soda fruit juice area.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I heard a quote today that our state of Vermont is number 6 as far as the lowest unemployment in the nation. We are number 6. I heard that number from our quote-unquote fearless leader, Mr. Sean. Okay. Did this come about in all these numbers of dollars, that you're talking about? I mean, obviously, there's a reason for this. And is the reason that this is happening this way the 3 Ps? Can't use the 4 Ps, can only use the 3 Ps.
Okay, what are the 3
Or prior planning.
No, actually, I think when you look at the sugar tax, it's the ability to get a very large sum of money into the general fund. It's being said it would go for healthcare, but once it goes in the general fund, appropriation takes it and puts it where they think it's most needed. So this tax could be raised under the theory it's going for healthcare, but it could go for transportation. It could go to water. It could go to offset taxes on schools or property taxes. It could go anywhere that appropriations decides to send it. So we're not sure. Hey, it's Tim Johnson. Hi, Tim. Okay, so we've been silent for like 12 minutes. No one said a word. Okay. Okay, well, come faster. Look, Tim is on his way to be as soon as possible. He's sorry he's a bit late. So anyway, one of the things that made the sugar tax come about was there are groups of people, the dentists, physicians, dietitians, that look at the sugar drinks as a great contributor to the obesity problem in the country. So it gives them a bad product to go after, and it gives them cover to taxes. It's like when you tax alcohol, when you tax tobacco, they're the sin taxes. So people are not sympathetic when you say, well, we're doing this so the children aren't as heavy, we're doing this so that people don't get type 2 diabetes. So there's a reason for it. And I don't think it's the 3 Ps. I think it's desperation, we need money, and this is an easy source to attack.
So in the long and the short of it then, what this might boil down to is, if you think about this, there's kind of 2 things to think about here. One, if this really does pass and it really does happen, I mean, it hasn't happened yet, it's still talking, it's been shot down once, it's been brought back, and it'll probably happen again. And, it'll be brought back, until finally says, oh, the hell, we'll just do it. But
that's generally what happens.
Yeah,
you come back until you get what they want.
Right. But what I'm saying is, what if they take this sugar, like the soda companies, and what happens if they take the sugar and treat it like a diabetic would? If you're a diabetic, you can't have sugar, but you can have Splenda. What if they take the sugar out and they start using Splenda? Is that a different sugar, or is that a sugar?
No, actually, if you drink a Diet Coke, you will not be taxed.
Well, this is true, but the question would be, sugar or Splenda?
Well,
Splenda is not sugar.
Right, that's why it's not taxed. So your diet beverages are not taxed. And there are many peculiarities to all this. An EBT card. If you have an EBT card, you're going to buy products. If you go to Walgreens, you can't buy an energy bar or a power bar with your EBT card. But you can buy a bag of chips, or you can buy a Hershey bar. So there's a lot of that stuff that needs to be squared away.
And this is true, but
when you start getting into it, it gets very complex.
And the issue of this, as people that live so close to the border, all the way up to Canada on both sides of the state, I can see where they're trying to do something here, maybe try to cut back on obesity a little bit.
No, they're trying to raise money.
That's all.
Well, yeah, but
They're trying to raise money.
they can use that as an excuse. It's good cover-up. But don't they understand that they're just going to create a better economy to the neighboring states, and eventually, maybe, even lose jobs in this state, because if you're not buying it, you can't sell it.
As strange as this may seem, you can't get them to believe that. We've talked about the alcohol tax increases, and why do you think Chesterfield has built that gigantic liquor outlet? It's It's not because our taxes are too low. And we've talked about when we went up on the tobacco tax and they estimated the revenue from the tobacco tax, and they said, oh, so many people must have quit smoking. No, they've gone to New Hampshire. New Hampshire's revenue went way up. And the proof of that was when they went up on the tobacco tax in New York, our retailers on the Vermont border from New York saw a tremendous increase in their tobacco sales. So we know it creates migration, and whatever you estimate as revenue, it's probably not going to pan out because people are going to go across. And I'm sure the guy over at T-Bird has hired somebody to figure out how he's going to add on to his store. Michael. Thank you.
Hey, Mike, there's two ways of looking at this, is that you look on the income side and the spending side. One of the things that, having lived in New Jersey and watched as far as what the emergency services, when you have the demographics of, say, New York or New Jersey, what they do is, in the fact is that their local organizations pool into county organizations, and it drops your cost. Now, the service level is equal to or better than what they had as individuals. You know, what I see is when you take a look at New Hampshire and Vermont, and you look at that, what it comes down to as far as the demographics and the services and whatnot, New Hampshire and Vermont are both spending money on, say, state, you know, the police department training and the EMS agency oversight and the fire training service. And if you start taking a look at, we have memorandums of understanding across the border and within our own states and across the border, and yet that's only for an emergency. If you turn around and took a look at what our cost, think about it. If we shared responsibility just for fire, EMS, and police, and as far as the training, and we put just in the New Hampshire State Police Academy and put a Vermont person in that academy, and we didn't have an academy, how much money would we save? We'd save a lot. Think about all the different services, and if the two states got together and put their heads together, we have equal to or better than service, and possibly half, maybe a third of what our costs are in order to run a state. That is what's going to get us out of the problem.
Well, that is a consideration and things to look at, but it's the same thing as you look at Vermont. We don't have a very strong county government. And if you look just west to New York, they do have a very strong county government. In fact, over in New York, my brother and I have property over there. In that county, they do everything based on county government, and our taxes are significantly lower, school taxes, all that sort of thing. But you run into the local control issues, and there's tremendous resistance to turning down or not turning down, but diminishing our local control as people see it. And local control is what you perceive as being. Jimmy, you're here.
We also play the
Mike, you're out of order. Sit down.
I'm done. Any more questions? No? Good, thank you. In the town report, I did write a little letter back in January. Most of the information is no longer pertinent. But what it is my contact information. So if you have any questions at all, any suggestions, feel free to call, email, whatever you want. Leave a message for the Sergeant at Arms. Love to hear from people back home. It not only makes me feel like I'm back home, but also helps me when I want to argue a point to say, you know, I've got people back home that are looking at this and they're concerned. So please contact me, and by all means, if you come up to Montpelier, stop by the house. It is the people's house, it's your house. So stop by and have coffee or something and be quick. Thank you.
Is there a sewing machine in the teacher's room?
Okay.
All right, you know. Thank you. I would like to start by apologizing to the body for my tardiness.
One important question. Do you want
Yes.
sugar or sugar
What's that
free?
again?
Do you want sugar or free?
Diet.
Diet,
As
okay.
long as I have the caffeine.
Otherwise, we're going to have to check.
All right. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for my tardiness, but that's what happens when you elect a radio journalist as your moderator. We will reconvene the town meeting, and we are at article number 32, to see if the town will rename the firefighter 1 training appropriation to firefighter training. Your appropriation balance is on page 28 of your annual report. Is there a motion on the floor?
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Dudley.
I move that the town rename the firefighter 1 training appropriation to firefighter training.
Is there a second? I did hear a second. Moved and seconded that the town rename the firefighter 1 training appropriation to firefighter training. Discussion on the motion, Mrs. Howell. Please grab the microphone. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, what I was going to ask was that we go directly to the Select Board budget, which is Article 37, before we vote on this one. Because I want to kind of amend that one, if that's at all possible.
Well,
To include this.
you have left me in a parliamentary quandary. Tell you what, I would suggest that we do two things. One, we move to table the discussion of Article 32 until after the Select Board budget. Then we would entertain a motion to suspend the rules and go right to the Select Board budget. Okay, so I would ask for your first motion, Mrs. Howell.
Yes.
Do I hear a second on that motion? I do. So I believe I heard a, I have a motion to temporarily table, Mr. Fairman. Do you have a point of order, or?
Is that motion available?
You know what, let me check my Robert's Rules handy cheat sheet.
I have information that will be of considerable interest in the meeting concerning this, the trip for Russell and I.
Actually, that motion, sir, is not debatable under Robert's Rules 10th edition.
Okay.
So all those in favor of...
Was there a second?
I did hear a second up here. All those in favor of tabling Article 32 until after discussion of the Select Board budget, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You have temporarily tabled Article 32. And I believe I heard a second motion out of you, Mrs. Howe, if you could propose that.
Yes, Mr. Moderator, you did. The motion was to suspend
The rules.
the rules, yes, and go to Article 36, I believe.
The Select Board budget is Article 37.
37,
All
yes.
right. Is there a second?
Second.
Move to suspend the rules and immediately go to Article 37. This requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor of the rule suspension to immediately take up the budget, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You have gone to Article 37. We shall take up Article 37 to see if the town will raise $1,972,700.58 and appropriate $2,506,993 to defray expenses and liabilities for the ensuing year. You shall find the Select Board budget on pages 23 through 27 of your annual report. Do you wish to speak to your motion? Actually, I need a motion to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moderator, I move that the town raise $1,972,700. Sorry, got me all nervous. And 58 cents, and appropriate $2,506,993 to defray its expenses and liabilities for the ensuing year.
Moved and seconded that the town raise $1,972,700.58 and appropriate the sum of $2,506,993 to defray its expenses and liabilities for the ensuing year. Mrs. Howe, do you wish to speak to your motion?
I would like to, no. I would not.
Okay. Further discussion on Article 37, Mr. Fairman.
Mr. Moderator, due to information that Treasurer Brassor and I discovered yesterday in conversations with the Vernon Town cities and towns, and who referred us to the Secretary of State's office, I am going to move an amendment, and then I'm going to speak to it to explain why I'm moving it, and this is when I'll explain what we found out. So for Article 37, I move that it be amended to reduce by $177,795.63 the amounts raised and appropriated. And I shall explain why.
Moved and seconded that, let me just make sure I have this correct, Mr. Fairman, that you would amend the bottom line, be raised and appropriated by $177,795.63. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, sir.
All right, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Treasurer Brassor and I were having a casual conversation yesterday morning when we asked ourselves, what if? So, as I mentioned, we spoke with the Vermont League of Cities and Towns who said, we don't know. You better talk with the Secretary of State's office. I have in my hand an email that I received from Deputy Secretary of State Brian Love. This was yesterday afternoon, 2:43 p.m. Quote, a select board's authorization to spend appropriations does expire at the end of that fiscal year. The select board has no authority to spend the unspent funds unless the voters specifically authorize them to do so. So I would ask you now to please look at page 28 of your town reports, specifically top of the page under miscellaneous appropriations. The total of the amounts in the right-hand columns is the amount that I proposed as an amendment, $177,795.63. You will note in the boldface note there below the numbers, balances as of June 30th, 2012 do not include appropriation amounts voted at the March 2012 town meeting. In other words, every amount that we see here is for a fiscal year prior to this year. Now, we have an opinion from the Secretary of State that all of those appropriations have expired. The Select Board has no authority to spend the money, so it's effectively frozen. And since all this money is for fiscal years prior to this one, it effectively has reverted to the general fund. Now, we, this evening, are free to decide how to spend that money however we wish. We can use it to reduce taxes. In other words, we can leave the amendment in place that I have moved, or we can decide to add expenditures for one thing or another out of our $177,000. But at the moment, the money is, all of those funds that you see listed on page 28, the amounts actually have been zeroed out. We still have the money, but the appropriations have expired, so the money is not currently available for those purposes. Just to reiterate, if we wish, we can decide simply to say, okay, let us replace each of the items with the amount that is shown there. But what we learned from the Secretary of State is that we have to do this every year because appropriations expire at the end of each fiscal year. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on the Fairman amendment to Article 37, Mrs. Howe.
He's absolutely correct. However, I do believe that we can vote for these appropriations to remain as they are. And I would make that amendment to Mr. Fairman's amendment if that is not possible, Mr. Moderator.
I'm going to for reasons of clarity, ruled against a tertiary amendment. Instead, your wish, if you wish to keep those funds where they are, it would make sense to vote down the Fairman Amendment if that's what you're looking for.
Sarah?
Could we have the treasurer hopefully shed some clarity on the situation?
Yes, we were under the impression that we could continue with the appropriations as long as the body voted to do so. So that's what Chris is asking for as an amendment.
How about this as a solution? We deal with these amendments separately. We deal with the Fairman Amendment, and then if that is one way or the other, you would propose a separate amendment to ratify use of said funds.
Right.
How would that be?
That would be fine.
Okay. I realize I'm thinking on my feet here, having heard this for the first time tonight. Further discussion on the amendment to Article 37, Mrs. O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I just want to explain to folks, the way this was done here is something that's been done as much as any of us can remember as far back as 1985. So it was a process that we all, the town treasurer, the auditors, thank you, I'm sorry, Phyllis, I looked at you and auditor wouldn't come out, the auditors, select boards, it was the way we handled finances. Through Mr. Fairman's investigating the issue, we found that that is not, in fact, the way we should be handling them. So all we want to do is clean it up so that we're moving that money forward and using it in a proper way so that we're abiding by all the laws of the state is what we're trying to do. So we're not trying to take away the firemen's training money or any of those other things, but we want to make sure that we're doing things in a legal way so that there are no repercussions. Okay?
Thank you. Chair recognizes Mr. Pond.
I was kind of wondering myself, okay, first of all, I listened to what Mr. Fairman said, I listened to what I think Chris said, and if we do vote this down, or let's say we pass this, what happens? You can't shake your head no yet because your springs are working.
I'm sorry, Ken.
So if we pass Mr. Fairman's motion, and the money gets reduced by
177,000.
what he said, what happens? I mean, is that money that Mr. Fairman is talking about, is that necessary money? Or is this money above and beyond? And if we pass this bill, okay, if we pass Mr. Fairman's bill, and the budget gets amended to be reduced, is that in fact going to make people's taxes go down and the town budget become tighter?
If we pass Mr. Fairman's motion, we can make a second motion to put that money back into the line items that are here now. We can put it back to the bottom line to defray taxes, but then we don't have any money in there for the town office FOIA project, which has already been started and way into the works. The Vernon historian, outside organizations, and the firefighter training money is gone. So, these are, the Dunkley Farm fire pond money is gone. The money for the town, the little leftover for the town audit, I mean, all of this money goes back into the general fund. So we don't have these line items anymore. And I think that we need to make sure, at least a few of these stay intact, because certainly we want to be able to train our firefighters and, the energy efficiency of the inefficiency of the town foyer needs to be addressed, so those kinds of things. But that would be a motion after this. If we don't pass Mr. Fairman's amendment, we're not abiding by the law.
Further discussion on the amendment, Mr. Fairman, I'll recognize you for a second time, sir.
I entirely agree with Chairwoman O'Donnell that we need to do something here because since the appropriations that expired were for fiscal years prior to this one, there actually are no appropriations sitting there anymore. We have to reappropriate the money. Now, we can do this, and we're entirely free to do it, but of course, as voters of the town of Vernon, we do have the right, since this is our money, to discuss each of these items if we wish to, and ask, why is the money still there? Is it still needed? Is there the right amount of money? Should there be more money? Should there be less money? Because it is our money. So I'm suggesting that that once we pass the amendment, that we look at each of them individually and say, all right, what do we want to do here? For example, I would ask the question, if we appropriate money for a project, how long is the town allowed to sit on our money before we use it for something else? Because instead of giving the money to the town, we could have used it for things in our own personal lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on the amendment, Mr. Paul.
My fault. This is a technical question. I don't have a question about these. If we establish these, and like a couple of these were in 2008, like the firefighter training, and I believe the police vest were in 2008, is that when you establish the funds by a warning, how can and they went away in 2009 and they no longer exist, how can we basically be doing this vote at all if we're not doing it and it hasn't been warned? It was by a warning, and now it's not by a warning, and we're trying to vote on it. How can you do that?
Well, since the town attorney is not here, he can't render an opinion. And I'm not an attorney, so I'm not going to render an opinion either. I mean, I can give you my 2 cents, but I don't think that's appropriate at this point. I'm really at a quandary as to how to proceed. The select board, please shed some light on this. Use a microphone, please.
Well, I feel that you can amend any motion. That's legal at town meeting. He has a right to amend this and bring it down by his $177,000. We have a right to vote it down. And then we also, I believe, if we do happen to vote it down, and then I amend this to bring these appropriations or leave them as they are for the year, I do believe that it's a legal motion.
All right, Mr. Andrews, you are recognized next.
As I understand this, from the opinion of the Assistant Secretary of State, at the end of the years that these appropriations were created, if the funds were not spent, then we no longer spend. There's a discussion about whether we can make an amendment to appropriate that. I hear what Mike is saying. I want to amplify that. If we pass the motion that we're discussing, which seems prudent, expending these funds have not been warned. I don't think that you can actually make a motion to extend these funds. Public has not been warned. Wouldn't we? We could come back as part of the budget process next year and appropriate those monies. Then in the morning we can discuss it.
Further discussion on the Fairman amendments? I believe, Mr. Pond, you had your hand up for a second time, sir.
Think about what he just said. Now, if we pass this bill and the money goes back to the general fund, now is there not a part at the end of the meeting where you could bring up a new amendment or whatever at the end, or am I kind of lame about what I'm talking about?
That's what we were planning.
Please use the microphone and please speak. Please talk to the chair. This is how.
But then in the same breath, how much time does the public or do the people have to be warned of the issue?
Mrs. Howe? Or anybody on the select
I'm
board?
sorry, I don't understand what his question was. What do you mean? How long does it, we have to wait at least 40 days, 45 days?
Please use a microphone if you possibly could, because we cannot hear you, and the people on TV will not be able to hear you either.
That's okay.
You have a lovely voice.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so anyways, oh, there he is.
I'm sorry, Mr. Moderator. We do have somebody in the room that probably could answer these questions for us, and I really hate to put him on a spot. But can you? Now you
Mr. Carroll is recognized.
Rich Carroll, and I'll preface this by saying this is not legal advice. I'll just give you my opinion as a taxpayer. But I think you can, the town is allowed to amend its proposed budget either up or down as long as it's within reason. And that's your call, Mr. Moderator, as to whether it's germane at some point. So some of these things could certainly be motioned to add to this year's budget. I think the problem would be when you get to things like the town office foyer and the Duncan fire pod, which are substantial numbers and might be kind of beyond the realm of what is a reasonable amendment to the budget. But certainly the firefighting training is an annual cost that could be added, and I think maybe the bulletproof vests and some of the smaller things would not push the budget so far away from what was warned that it would not be an unreasonable amendment.
Thank you for your excellent, although not official advice. The moderator is going to rule that we will have the ability to add or go up or down on these funds, because we are still talking about the budget, and if someone wishes to challenge that, Wyndham Superior Court is in New Fame. Further discussion on the Fairman Amendment. Mr. Unruh with the back row.
I know we're talking about the public being warned for this dollar amount, but this dollar amount that we see in our book includes that $177,000, does it not?
Yes.
No.
No.
Yes.
I'm getting a no, yes.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes, Mrs. Howe.
Yes. What Mr. Fairman is doing is gave you an amount of the $177,000 that's already there. We do not have to raise that money. If you take it away, and we try to put it back, it's the same amount of money because the money is already there. There'll be no raising of it at all. The money's already there in the appropriations. We're not going to ask for any more money to be raised in these appropriations. All I would be doing is asking that it continues for one more, it stays there for one more year, so that next year we can come and warn it properly.
Mr. Dunkley.
My opinion is that we should vote for this amendment in order to comply with what basically the town should have been doing all along for a number of years. If we pass it, and personally I'd rather not go line by line through each fund. Many of these funds have already been extensively looked at over the last few years. I'd really rather not spend the rest of the evening arguing over vests or anything. Again, my preference, we should go ahead with this amendment, Fairman Amendment, and then go ahead and put the money back.
Chair recognizes Town Treasurer.
I agree that the money should go back, and I just have, and I'll tell you why I'm thinking that too. One of the reasons is because two of those items have been spent. after July 1st, we have spent the $738 for the Vernon historians, and we have spent the docs and individual money. So there's no money there. And since we already warned this and we already have this money, Chris is exactly right. We will not have to raise money. It's not within the budget because we've already raised it, however. So it doesn't exist in the budget that you're going to pass tonight. It's already been voted.
Further discussion on the Fairman amendments? Seeing none, again, the amendment, I'll just double check you, Mr. Fairman, my elderly brain is getting out, that we reduce the amount we raise and appropriate from the proposed town budget by $177,795.63. Is that correct, sir?
It is, sir.
Thank you. All those in favor of the amendment?
The treasurer has a minute.
We will not change the amount.
Please use the microphone.
We will not be changing the amount to be appropriated, only the amount to be raised. The appropriated amount will stay the same. That's our budget amount. But we're only going to reduce the amount to be raised.
However, his amendment did say to reduce the amount to be raised and appropriated.
Right, that's not correct.
Well, if you would like a friendly amendment, Mr. Fairman, I think we can live with that.
Mr. Moderator,
Please
yes,
wait on the microphone, sir.
I apologize for my mistake there. I stand corrected by the treasurer, and of course I would welcome a friendly amendment as she indicated.
If the secretary is fine with that, to get us out of the jail. Did the secretary agree to that? Yes, good, thank you. So, again, the amendment as now a bit clearer, that we reduce the amount we appropriate. Sally, hello?
Yes.
I just want to be correct on this because this is the official record. So are we just reducing the amount that we appropriate?
No, you're only reducing the amount to be
Thank
raised.
you. We're reducing the amount that we raise by $177,795.63. Mr. Miller, please wait on the microphone, Paul.
I guess I'm rising to a question for information. Why are we dealing with Article 37? How do these relate to Articles 34 and 36, which also involve money? How can we arrive at a budget figure if we haven't voted these funds yet?
The select board is interrogated, Mrs. Howard.
Yes, because these amount of monies in 36 and 35, 34, I believe, is the one to change the, 32, excuse me, was to change the firefighter 1 training to firefighter training period. That would be the new name. And those are in the appropriations. So to change them, to delete them, or take them away, and if we put them back with the amendment, then we'll go back and we'll add more money to it, because it's all to do with appropriations. We just want to make them kind of like house cleaning. You understand what I'm saying? Am I explaining it right? I'm really bad about explaining, but this has to come first before we can add more money.
Mr. Miller, what's your question?
Am I correct, Sally?
I'm not entirely, because what if we vote them down?
Well, very true.
All right, further discussion on the Fairman amendments? Are you ready for the question? Again, I will repeat what I believe is the amendment, and I know that you'll correct me if I'm wrong. The amendment is that we reduce the amount to be raised by $177,795.63. Okay. All those in favor of the amendment as read, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. I believe the ayes have it, and the amendment has been passed. We go on to the article as amended. Mrs. Howe.
I'd like to amend this article as amended. And I'm not sure the wording that I want to use, but I believe that each appropriation line by line, I would ask that they be brought in as appropriations with these amounts for the ensuing year.
Okay, could you possibly list the appropriations?
I can.
That would be good for purposes of clarity. That would be good to list those as one amendment.
They are called the miscellaneous appropriations, and they'll follow. Town office foyer, $66,880.85. Town office perimeter drain for $4,376.11. Vernon Historians, Inc. photo, $7.38. $7.38. The DocSend for, line by line here, in the amount of $4,658.47. Firefighter 1 training in the amount of $12,974.63. Dunkley Fire Pond in the amount of $80,055.69. The town audit in the amount of $750. The town war memorial in the amount of $1,740. Digital map of tax maps for $4,365. Police bulletproof vest in the amount of $1,987.50. Second.
Moved and seconded that the miscellaneous appropriations be added to the bottom line as listed ably by Mrs. Howe and Mrs. O'Donnell. Discussion on the amendment. Ron. Please wait the microphone. Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry. I just want to encourage you, the treasurer and everybody responsible for these allocations, should this amendment pass, to make sure it's done within the year. Or we lose the money. Absolutely.
Thank you. Further discussion on the Howe amendment to Article 37. Seeing none, Mr. Fairman.
Mr. Moderator, just because it seems to me that it's time that we revisit these very briefly, I'm going to address a series of questions to whoever in the room knows the answer. Regarding the town office foyer, we, I believe, appropriated that money, please correct me, Treasurer Brasser, if I'm incorrect, in 2009. So the money's been sitting there all that time. I know we had some architect's work done, and I believe it was 2 years ago at town meeting that we had the architect's drawings over on that table to look at, but nothing has happened. So my question to whoever can answer it regarding the town office foyer, and I would like to ask questions about some of the other line items as well. Regarding that one, what is the schedule for completion of this project?
The select board is interrogated and still done.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. As you mentioned the dates on this town office foyer, it's been kind of hanging out there for a few years. And the hard thing about select board and town governance is it changes all the time. And there were members of the board who were no longer on the board as the project went along, and there were members of the board who really didn't even remember there was a project out there because they weren't part of the board. And that is some of what happened. There was a lot of controversy with the architect, and should we build the foyer project is elaborate from discussions that have been related to me. I may not be relating them exactly the same way you would, Mike, but this is my understanding, I wasn't on the board at the time, so, and I've already let that be known. We did become aware of it just a few months ago, and we've had a few local people in town have worked with Mike Coughlin on ways to design the building or build the foyer in a little less expensive way than what has been done, to just close up the foyer, put a couple windows and a couple doors. It's very inefficient right now. It's costing a lot of energy, and as we said, this project, I guess, has been hanging around for a lot of years, so we are working on getting it done. Unfortunately, there was some conversation that went on at Select Board that somebody said something about the architect, and that's how the rest of us on the board even found out that there was something going on. So once we did find out, we are working on it, and it is in the process, and Mike Coughlin has already met with the other folks, and he's supposed to have a proposal to the Select Board within the next couple of weeks.
Further questions, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, just to be sure I understand that answer.
Your mic isn't on. Thank you.
Great, thank you. It appears that in the next couple of weeks, the board hopes to receive a report from Mr. Coughlin as to the progress of this project. Okay. Town office perimeter drain, what's going on there?
The Select Board is interrogated. Can someone answer the question, please? Thank you.
Can we have Mr. Fairman's mic taken away from him?
Mr. Fairman will have someone answer the question. Mrs. Newton?
Phyllis Newton. When I went to ask Mike Coughlin if this money had been, the project had been completed and could it go back to the general fund, he said to hold it for one more year because the foyer is going to, the new foyer is going to involve the handicap ramp, and the perimeter drain might also be affected, so that he wanted to hold that money for at least until that project was complete.
Thank you. Back to Mr. Fairman for additional questions.
Yes, let me see. We go down over Vernon historians, outside organizations, the one called Docs and Individual. What's that?
The historians or the Select Board are interrogated. The town treasurer has your answer. Well, Michael will read. Thank you.
The DocSend individual is actually we have two people who scan the records. We are in the process of digitalizing all of our town records, and we have two people who are copying those for us. That is one of the appropriations, Mr. Chairman, that's been spent.
Thank you. Further questions, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. Perhaps this is a question for the fire chief. Firefighter 1 training, $12,000, nearly $13,000. What's going on there?
Please pass the mic to either Chief Capel or Mr. Andrews. Who can answer that? Mr. Andrews.
I believe this was 2008 when this was first appropriated by an article. At the time, it was Chief Fox and myself. We were getting information from the state of Vermont that the Firefighter 1 training program, which typically they do up at the Fire Academy in Pittsburgh as well as throughout the state, being severely cut budget-wise. In the next few years, they were not planning on having any Firefighter 1 training courses anywhere south of Rutland. Anticipating the fact that there's always a churn in the fire department and you need to get people qualified, we asked for it and received the $15,000. Subsequent to that, a number of departments in the area started hosting firefighter training classes. We also had one down here that was paid for in part through a grant that we got through Entergy. Despite that, you'll see it has been drawn down over the time as we've had various and sundry firefighter trainings. That also relates to the move this evening to try to change the scope, which was limited to Firefighter 1, to be firefighter training, since there's many other primary opportunities for firefighters that aren't strictly within the federally structured firefighting program.
Thank you. Chief Capel, did you wish to add anything? Okay, Mr. Fairman, you're up again.
And my final question, Mr. Moderator, which perhaps also is addressed to the fire department, but I'll let them decide that. What's up with the Dunkley Fire Pond?
All right, so call the fire department, Chief Gaten.
As of right now, there isn't any plans to go forward with the Dunkley Fire Pond. At a select board meeting with Albert Dunkley, we have decided that if the fire pond was dredged to provide adequate water supply, then we wouldn't need the storage tanks. At this time, we haven't got to make sure that the water supply is adequate.
Thank you. Mr. Fairman, have we answered your question, sir?
I would just like to be sure I understand what the, I'm just going to say what I believe I understood, because I don't always get it. At the moment, you don't have any, you don't have any active projects for spending this money. Did I understand that correctly?
The select board is interrogated, Mrs. O'Donnell.
What is happening right now, and I wanted to say this because I think it needs to be said, and I apologize to the Dunkleys because I know that you don't like having this done, but the Dunkley Pond has been privately funded by the Dunkleys, which I think is just awesome for them to do for this town. The $80,000 is still in there, and remaining in there for right now is because we're not sure of the draining of the pond. So there was a plan to put in tanks in the south end of Vernon. The Dunkleys put their pond in. We may not need the tanks, but we don't know that for sure yet because it'll depend on the drainage of the fire pond. As you can tell, I've learned more about fire ponds than I ever wanted to know. So it's going to depend on how the drainage goes on the fire pond. So to delete that fund, we may have to raise it again. So I think we're better off to just keep that fund for now, sit on it for a year, watch how the drainage is going with the fire pond, and then make that decision next year. Is that okay? Todd, is that a good explanation?
Chief Gaten.
That would be a good assumption.
Thank you.
Mrs. Newton is recognized.
Phyllis Newton. My concern here, it's actually a question, because Patty's referring to the Dunkley Fire Pond like as a fund, keep that fund. It has never been set up as a fund, it's been set up as an appropriation, just like all of these others that we've listed tonight. And historically, we've kept them if they've been voted and they get spent in the year that it was voted, there's a balance of zero. But if the project hasn't been completed, we've kept it as, we've just kept a running balance. And now we're finding out that this isn't the correct way to do this. But we're going to have to really focus on what we really need every single year and not over budget for it. Say like last year we budgeted we voted $66,000 for headstones. And if we don't get them done by June, you're saying that that money is gone. Or the town picnics, or, yes. Yes, that's what it is. Unless we set up an individual fund for each one of these, we can't handle it this way anymore.
Which is what we
The select board is interrogated. Do you wish to say anything further? Mrs. O'Donnell.
The auditor is right. That is how we've done bookkeeping in this town since as long as anybody could remember. If the money hadn't gotten spent and they were still in the process of using it, it just stayed there in that line item. And I call everything a fund. It is not a fund. That was a mistake for me to use that word. But so it just stayed in that line item. And as I said earlier, I think as far back as people can remember, the town has been doing it this way since 1985. And it was actually through Mr. Fairman's conversation with the treasurer that this whole research thing started. We realized that this is not a conversation that just came along today, yesterday and today. So we don't have 100 answers. We're just trying to abide by the law and make sure that we're not depleting the firefighters' training programs and stuff like that. So that's what we're here to do tonight. And Phyllis is right. Any monies that we're raising for special items like town picnic or things like that, if the money doesn't get spent, we cannot hold it over any longer. So, all of the departments are going to have to be very careful when they're building budgets to make sure that they're not getting what they don't need.
Thank you. Mr. Bond.
Sometimes I don't understand, and this is one that I don't. What is a doc said individual?
The select board.
Did I miss that?
Or someone is.
Okay. Then if I missed it, I was probably doing something else, so never mind.
Oh, I'm sure it was something very, very important, Mr. Pine, so we will explain it to you again. It has to do with the digitizing of all the documents in the town office.
Okay.
Mrs. Howe.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to query our treasurer on, there must be some way that we can keep, like the cemetery headstones, the Dunkley Fire Pond, and things that are, then what happens to the elderly assistance program when we don't? Is it a fund?
Ms. Brasser is Terry. Thank you.
The elderly assistance is a fund, so when you appropriate to a fund, we transfer that money into the fund. That takes the problem away. These were open, these are not funds, and this is what Phyllis was saying, so we don't have the right to hold on to them. They had nowhere to go.
Thank you. Further discussion on the Howe amendment to Article 37. Are we ready for a vote? Very good. All those in favor of the amendment which calls for adding the listed miscellaneous appropriations to the budget, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You passed the Howe amendment. We move to Article 37 as amended. Further discussion on the amended motion. Seeing none. All those in favor of Article 37 as amended, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You have passed Article 37. We now go back to Article number 32. Mr. Bond, you rise for a point of some sort, sir? Please grab a microphone.
It's just a point of question. Last night we tabled Article number 24, and at what point of the night will we pick that up?
Sir, we shall pick up Article 24 after Article 38, prior to the other business article. Okay. I appreciate the question. Again, we go back to Article number 32 to see if the town will rename the Firefighter 1 training appropriation to Firefighter Training. The appropriation balance on page 28 of your annual report. Is there a motion on the floor? Mr. Dunkley? Yes.
I move that the town rename the Firefighter 1 training appropriation to Firefighter Training.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded that the town rename the Firefighter 1 training appropriation to Firefighter Training. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, if you are ready for a vote, all those in favor of Article 32 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You passed Article 32. We move to Article 33 to see if the town will rename the Dunkley Fire Pond Fund to South Vernon Fire Pond Fund, and that appropriation balance on page 28 of your annual report. Is there a motion on the floor? Mr. Dunkley, is that you?
Yes, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Dunkley.
Mr. Moderator, I move that to see if the town will rename the Dunkley Fire Pond Fund to the South Vernon Fire Pond Fund.
Is there a second?
No. Leave it right where it is.
You'll have the chance to make that discussion during the article. I'm looking for a second on the motion. Moved and seconded that the town rename the Dunkley Fire Pond Fund to South Vernon Fire Pond Fund. Is there discussion on the motion? Mr. Ball, you have your hand up.
Mr. Moderator, Mike Ball. I move to amend the motion to get rid of the word fund and change it to appropriation.
Okay, do I have a second on that again?
Second.
Moved and seconded that we change the word fund to appropriation. Discussion on the Ball amendment. Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay.
No.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and the Ball amendment has been passed. We continue discussion of amended Article 33. Further discussion on the amended article. Mr. Crossman, in the back of the room, sir.
Anybody ever notice when you go down south of here how nice looking Dunkley keeps his farm? Have you ever noticed what he keeps around that fire pond nice and trimmed up? I think we ought to at least put up a big monument there and say, thanks to Dunkley Farm, they keep a nice fire pond, they keep nice scenic view coming from Massachusetts into Vermont. I think we ought to just leave it the way it is. He's always done all he can to, and it's not, I also want people to know that's not just for Dunkley Farm. That has been used for other fires, such as skid fire, Vernon fire. It's been used for other fires in my past. I think it would be a slap in the Dunkley family's face to make that a South Vernon fire pond when it's already the Dunkley fire pond. And that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I apologize for my last no. I get so excited about this that I voted no at the wrong time. I would like Mr. Crossman to know that we had this same conversation at Select Board, and it was not the Select Board who suggested changing the name of that pond. It was one Select Board member. And I agree 100% with you.
Well, I'm just letting that...
Mr. Crossman, you are out of order, sir. You can only speak when recognized. Thank you. Mrs. O'Donnell, please continue.
And we had a lengthy discussion about this, and you're 100% right about the Dunkley family, as many of our old-time Vernon families. They're very humble and very helpful to this town, and the Dunkleys have provided more to this town than any of us will ever know. At the end of today, I am going to vote no. I voted yes because I felt it was my responsibility as the board chair to go along with Jeff's wishes. But there's a whole lot of people here, so I'll be outvoted anyway, and I just want the Dunkleys to know that we in this town really appreciate all that they have done for this town, and I'm really sorry to be embarrassing you, and I know I am, but this town's a better place because of people like you, and we thank you.
Mr. Ball had his hand up first, and Mr. Ball will recognize you afterwards.
Well, a couple things. I still don't quite understand why you guys are messing around with the name. Well, you know, the other thing, I ain't heard that man say jack squat about this. If he wants to say something back on this amendment, he should. But at this point, he has said nothing about his desires to change this thing. Personally, I say we leave it alone and we vote no.
Further discussion on the article, Mr. Ball.
I'm going to try to explain something. All we're talking about is the line item for money. We are not talking about changing the Dunkley Fire Pond name. This is a line of money. No, hear me out. There is money that's been set aside that it used to be named that. And this money is set aside so that if, when we do the technical evaluation of the water supply, and it doesn't satisfy the insurance company's requirements, you have to have a certain depth of water so that when it freezes, that you have a usable volume in the wintertime. And if that amount of water that's in the pond doesn't satisfy the insurance company's requirements, then we're going to be putting underground tanks. And the underground tanks aren't going to be called the Dunkley Fire Pond.
Why?
The underground tanks aren't a pond. They're underground tanks. So what you do is you appropriately name the fund that you're going to pay the company to bury tanks. You name it the South Vernon Fire Water Supply because it's underground tanks. And if you named it the Dunkley Fire Pond, it would be misnamed and it would be misused. So what we're doing is, we are not changing the name of the pond. All we're doing is setting aside some money here to make sure is, if the pond doesn't satisfy our winter fire requirements, we will bury tanks under the museum property so that in the wintertime, that water won't freeze. And if we had a fire down at the south end of town, we would then have a water supply. So it's a name for some money. That's all. Not naming any pond.
Thank you. Further discussion, Mrs. O'Donnell.
I just had a side discussion here with Mr. Dunkley. I think when we were at Select Board, the rest of the Select Board was under a different impression of what Mr. Dunkley was trying to do than what Mr. Dunkley was trying to do. I support the fund being changed so we can use it with more flexibility, but I think that there's a lot of people in this room that don't support the name of the pond being changed, and that's what the Select Board thought. But the conversation we had at Select Board, they were both talked about, and that was the opinion that Select Board was getting, that both were changing.
Mr. Dunkley, do you wish to speak? Thank you, sir.
Finally, yeah, I'll say for myself, no, that's exactly the thing, is Mr. Ball's right in that to term this fund or appropriation, Dunkley Fire appropriation, isn't entirely correct. Again, there are other locations that that may be appropriate for water supply that would be on real estate my family does not own. So all due respect to Mr. Crossman, the Dunkley Fire Pond will always be called Dunkley Fire Pond. But this particular appropriation really, it would be for the benefit of all of South Vernon.
The chair would recognize at this time Mr. Alfred Dunkley.
Okay, I'm sitting here bewildered. Why the heck some little water hole in Newton Brook taking on all this time and conversation? If anybody's in for a history lesson, I'll give them one. Because that pond was started back in the early 1900s by two Dunkley brothers and Sam Czar. You remember Sam Czar? Yeah, okay. They dug it by hand, and it was there for years. And I've got a picture that will prove that. And so that was always the Dunkley Pond, which I could care less what it's got a name. All I want is water when we have a fire. And we didn't have very good water back when the barn burned in 1980, and that's the reason that I went to the selectman or fire department and asked them if it could be dredged out and made deeper, because all they ended up doing was sucking mud. And if anybody went through that kind of experience, they know a little bit about what I'm talking about. But anyway, we asked for $6,500 at that time, and that's set for 30 years between several fire chiefs and people in the fire department, and talking about doing it, but never getting anything done and being maintained. So when this came about again here a few years ago, I approached them and told them that perhaps they could put, if they want to put tanks, they could put them in that area, but that didn't seem to work. And so out of desperation, I went and I used my entertainment money and hired a contractor, and between contractor and ourselves, you see what there is for a pond. It's not what I would like to see, but it is a pond. And it made everybody in the area feel, I think, a little better. At least we had some water, which I think somebody will tell you that if you can produce about 1,000 gallons a minute there. So that's kind of the end of my story, Mr. Harvey. And if you want to go further, I probably could go on with more history, but I think you had enough. And what I wanted to make it clear is that money, I don't remember what was appropriated, but it got up to over $100,000, didn't it, Mr. Lowe? And it started at 65, and then it got over to 100 or something, and none of that money was spent for that pond. So.
Thank you, Mr. Dunkley. I haven't heard you talk so much since my dad was alive, and I think the conversation was a bit more colorful. Further discussion on Article 33 as amended. Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 33 as amended, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You passed Article 33. We move to Article 34 to see if the town will raise and appropriate the sum of $6,600 to the Southeastern Vermont Economic Development Strategies for Economic Development. Is there a motion on the floor?
Mr. Moderator?
Mrs. O'Donnell.
I move that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $6,600 for Southeastern Vermont Economic Development Strategies for Economic Development.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $6,600 for the Southeastern Vermont Economic Development Strategies for Economic Development. Is there discussion on the motion? Mr. Martin Langeveld, I understand this is your first town meeting, so welcome, sir.
Good evening. My name is Martin Langeveld. I serve on the board of the Southern Vermont Economic Development Strategies, or SOVEDS. Julia Sorensen, who lives in town, is also on that board, so we are well represented. She couldn't be here tonight because she has a sick child. SOVEDS has been working for several years. It's a nonprofit organization to develop new economic strategies for Windham County. And, you know, we've had a lot of discussion last night and tonight about some of the economic conditions that we face in this region, and so this is an attempt to do something about this. In particular, we have a very aging population. Vermont is the second oldest state in the country in terms of median age. Windham County is the oldest county in Vermont. And as far as the oldest state in Maine, there's only one or two counties in Maine that are older than this county. And so the problem is, as has also been said here, that our younger people are leaving, they're going elsewhere because we don't have good jobs for them here, and we're not attracting other younger people to move here. So what SOVEDS is doing is developing something which is called a Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, or CEDS. To qualify for all kinds of federal money for federal projects, you need to have a CEDS. So there's lots of federal agencies that look at these CEDS plans that require them. So first of all, it's a prerequisite for directing economic development to this area. The planning that we're doing is a very public process. The meetings are open. There's a website with all the documentation that's on there. There will be meetings in March and in May. There's literature on the table here. There was literature on the table here. inviting you to those meetings, some more meetings later in the year, and the plan should be completed in November. Obviously, there's a cost to this planning process with consultants who work on this. The Brattleboro Select Board earlier appropriated $50,000 from the town of Brattleboro to fund this project as a matching challenge grant. In other words, they said, we will give $50,000 if all the other towns together match that $50,000. Brattleboro appropriated about $4 per person per resident. All the other towns are being asked for $3 per person, so that's how we come to Vernon's share being $6,600. Now, personally, I would like to ask you to approve this amount, and particularly because in Vernon, we have a unique challenge. We have one very large employer, and we have about 10% of the households in this town have someone working there. 63 people from Vernon work at Vermont Yankee, about 10% of the Vermont Yankee workforce, 10% of the working families in this town. We would be particularly impacted worse than any other town if anything happened to Vermont Yankee. We all hope that it continues for another 19 years, but we also know that it could close sooner for economic reasons, for technical reasons, for legal reasons, for whatever. And even if it continues for that full 19 years, it's not too soon to begin planning for what are the alternatives, what new kinds of jobs can we be developing in this area to eventually mitigate the effects of that closing. So the CVED's planning process will help us to start building good jobs in other business sectors so we can reverse these economic trends and mitigate the ultimate impact of the eventual closing of Vermont Yankee. And relative to many other things that we have voted and spent money on here, $6,600 is a small investment in an economic future here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Langeveld. Further discussion on Article 34? And seeing none. Microphone's right next to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Question for the presenter. Have you any knowledge about what other towns in Windham County have done with this? Because I think this came up last year in some of the other towns.
I'll bring the microphone to him. Okay, thank you.
No, this did not come up yet last year. This is new this year, and this is a one-time request. And I should have mentioned, this passed in, I mentioned Brattleboro that voted it. The select board had some economic development money that they could vote. But in the current round of town meetings, it's been passed in Bellows Falls, in Wilmington, in Newfane, in Dover, and in Marlborough, and it's still being discussed at other places that I haven't heard about it. So it has not been voted down anywhere.
Thank you. Further discussion, Article 34, back of the room, Mr. Fairman.
This would be a question for Mr. Langeveld. I'm looking at the Southeastern Vermont Economic Development Strategies fiscal year 2013 work plan on page 6, where I see the board members. And we see who their employers are. And I find it interesting, and I'm going to ask you why. I do not see, I see several municipalities, I see planning commissions, I see at least one financial institution, I see a tourist event, I see Stratton Mountain, I see Vermont Geeks, I'm not sure what that is. But what I notice is there seems to be no representation whatsoever from manufacturers, of which we have many in the region. I think, for example, of Commonwealth Yogurt. I think of the GS Precision. I think of what do they call it now? It used to be Fiber Mart. Is it still Fiber Mart, the paper mill up there on Putney Road? And of course, then there is Vermont Yankee, and there is Trans-Canada for the hydro plants at Vernon and at Bellows Falls. I'm wondering, why are these people not simply unrepresented, but not represented at all among your board members?
Mr. Langeveld is very, and we'll have a microphone in your hand before you know. We promise.
I can't precisely tell you that. I've only been on the board for 6 months myself. So I was not part of the original recruitment of that board. I can tell you, however, there is an expanded SEDS committee, in other words, additional people that are on a committee to oversee this SEDS planning process that does include some of those kinds of folks. I can also tell you that I am one of the 2 oldest people on that board. I'm not sure which one of us is older. And most of the folks that you mentioned there are in their 30s, 40s, maybe another 50-year-old or so. So this is very much, the younger people, the younger business leaders, government leaders are invested in this and are leading this, which is as it should be.
Thank you. Further discussion, Article number 34. Mr. Fairman, if no one else wishes to speak, I will recognize you for a second time, sir. And you are recognized. You have the floor.
Thank you. I am not opposing our appropriating this money, but I would like to suggest, as this is the town where Vermont Yankee resides and where Trans-Canada's Vernon Station resides, that you folks give serious consideration to obtaining representation from some of these people, because a number of your objectives involve creating jobs, developing the workforce, making sure that our young people stay here, but you are simply overlooking these people who certainly can assist you greatly in this regard, because they are the ones who have the most and the best paying jobs. It seems to me that if you do not include them, you're putting yourself in a position, because you're actually advocating doing things that involve them, you're putting yourself in a position of telling them what to do instead of asking them what to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion, Article 34. Mrs. O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. When Martin and Julia came in front of the select board with a proposal, they handed out the paperwork that Martin was saying was on the desk, and we spent a lot of time reading it, because it's not easy to bring anything in front of town meeting, because we know that people in this town are struggling. And that's why we put this in as an article. I was kind of depressed to hear Martin say we're the oldest county in the state, and as we sit here, we're all getting older. But look around Vernon. How many of our kids are here? Mine aren't. Mine aren't. I never, ever, especially a lot of you know Kelsey, worked all through high school and college at the pool. I never thought Kelsey would leave Vernon. Never. She moved to Boston in December. Why? Because there aren't any jobs here. So, we raised our kids here. Everything they love is here. But then as adults, they can't stay here because there's very little for them. And what really excites me about this program is, as Martin said, these young people. There are Vernon people on this board. There are people who work at Mtg that are part of this organization. So it's all-encompassing. It's not just business, big guys. It's how do we get a shot in the arm of Windham County? And, I think the one thing that we, as a community, were very, very remiss in the last 20 years is not preparing for our future, because we knew Vermont Yankee was there. There's nobody who supports Vermont Yankee more than I do. I have said all of my career, as long as it's safe, I'm there. In fact, they call me Miss Nuclear in Montpelier. Mike wasn't kidding about the comments that he was making. But we know that as great as an employer it is, as it is, as wonderful as the employees that work there are, it's not going to stay here forever. I pray we have 19 years, because I hate to see any of the people in our community that work at Vermont Yankee leave. They're an asset to this community, but we need to prepare for the future. And the future is not us, because we are getting old. I want to retire. I don't want to worry about where I'm going to work, but I do want to worry about where my kids are going to work. And this is a small amount of money to try something that's never been tried, and I encourage you to support it. Thank you.
Further discussion, Article number 34. Seeing none, the article is that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $6,600 for the Southeastern Vermont Economic Development Strategies for Economic Development. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor of Article 34 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You have passed Article 34. Article 35, to see if the town, pursuant to 24 VSA, subsection 2804, will establish a reserve fund under the control and direction of the Select Board for the purpose of operating the town. Mrs. O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. It's not smart to get all teary-eyed about my baby leaving home when it's my turn to do all the next to the articles, huh? Mr. Moderator, I move that the town, pursuant to 24 VSA 2804, establish a reserve fund under the control and direction of the Select Board for the purpose of operating the town.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded that the town, pursuant to 24 VSA subsection 2804, establish a reserve fund under the control and direction of the Select Board for the purpose of operating the town. Mrs. O'Donnell, do you wish to speak to your motion?
The treasurer would like to please.
Thank you. Ms. Brasser, you have the floor.
Okay, I'm going to do my best to explain this one. Most of you were here last night, although there are some new faces tonight. And what I'm going to ask you to do is remember Articles 3 and 4 from the school board section. And those were concerning fund balance and funding the school with money from a reserve fund. What we're trying to do in the town is the same thing. This has been encouraged by VLCT and by the state treasurer's office. And the reason for it is really more transparency in local government. Generally what happens is I, as treasurer, make a decision about how much fund balance, if any, we're going to use to help offset taxes. This article will allow you as taxpayers to decide that. What will happen is, and the reason that we use the language control and direction of the Select Board for the school, it was the school board, for the purpose of operating the town, is that the board has the duty at prior to town meeting, when they prepare the warning, to get these articles in and to warn what we need to vote on. And that's what their purpose is with this fund. They are going to be the deciding body as to what will go into the warning for what we need to use to offset our taxes. So I'm going to ask you to turn, because I want to explain this a little bit. I want you to turn to page 48, and this is actually the school board. And about mid-page down, there is a section called Other Local. And under that is fund balance and also transfer from capital fund. If you look at fund balance across the rows, across the columns, you'll see that every year the school has offset using fund balance money of $192,429. That is the amount that they use as revenue to lower what we pay in taxes. And it's an amount that they're very comfortable with. In 2012, the school had more than $192,429 in fund balance. And what the school did was establish the reserve fund, like we're trying to do, and the money that was not the $192,429, and I believe it was $148,000, was put into this reserve fund. The next year, we also had more than $192,000. We had $2,081 more. So that went into the reserve fund. This year, when we voted last night, we had less fund balance money. So we transferred money from that reserve fund that we had put money into. So this is what we're asking also to do. We're asking that we establish a fund, which will only be, a reserve fund is a designated fund, which has a special purpose. So the special purpose for our reserve fund would be to commit fund balance money to that account, to be used at a later time, in times of need, to offset should we need it. There'll be times we may not need it, and times we may need it. So that is the purpose of the reserve fund we're asking for establishment of tonight.
All right, thank you. Further discussion on Article 35? Mr. Fairman.
Mr. Moderator, I should like to ask Treasurer Brassar just a few questions to be sure I understand, hopefully to help the rest of us to understand. This reserve fund, will this be what is sometimes called a rainy day fund?
You will need to share the microphone.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Ms. Grasser, you're required.
I wouldn't refer to it as a rainy day fund. It's really committed fund balance money, so it can't be used for anything other than offsetting taxes in some form.
All right. So, further questions, Mr. Fairman, you still have the floor.
Thank you. So then, Treasurer Brassar, I'm not sure I'm understanding. It seems that we're going to take some of our money and we're going to put it into this fund. And sometime later, we're going to put some more of our money into this fund. And someday, we're going to use it to offset taxes. So it seems like what we're doing is we're giving the town our money, and later on the town says, we'll use that to reduce the amount of money that you have to give us now. If I'm understanding this correctly, what I'm asking you is, why would we give the town money before the town actually needs it to spend it on something?
Again, this Grasser was queried.
I hope I'm understanding your question. As with the school, we're not, we're committing some, we never use all of fund balance money. We usually only use a portion of it anyway, but the decision is made by myself or the school board or myself and the select board. What we want to do is have money that what happens too is prior to an audit, for instance, we don't know exactly how much fund balance money we have. We have an idea of what we have, but it hasn't been confirmed by an outside auditor. The purpose of it is to help us more, how do I want to put this? We don't, as a town, have a certain amount of money we offset taxes with every year. We take a look at fund balance and see what we feel that we can transfer over. And this year you'll see in the town report that we are asking for $75,000 from fund balance. That's what I feel comfortable with doing.
What page is that on?
That is on page 27. That's our budget, which has been passed this evening. So if you can see from fund balance, we usually transfer money from fund balance each year to help offset our taxes anyway. So right now, we're asking for a fund to be set up because we don't use all of it, to put the balance of what we don't use in it so that we can use it at a time of greater need. Does that help or not?
Other questions, Mr. Chairman?
I'm sorry to say, Treasurer Brassar, that I believe I'm now more confused than ever, because it seems that you've shown us the $75,000 there, which is coming from fund balances. Now, when you say fund balances, are we referring to funds like the Cusick Scholarship Fund or the Marsh Fund? So we're referring to what sort of fund?
Again, the treasurer is queried.
Fund balance is what you bring in a year and what you, it's the difference between your income and your expense. So what we spent this year was less than what we had. On page 21 on the comparative balance sheet, you can see that our net fund balance this year at the end of the year, which again is not confirmed by outside audit, is $216,911.46. And that is simply that. It is not any of the funds, all of the funds are separate from our general fund. That is our general fund money. So we brought in money for the preschool contract, we brought in money, of course, through the budget. We expended less money than we brought in, and therefore we are left with what we call a fund balance. And that's the money that I'm referring to.
Thank you. Any further questions, as you still have the floor under Robert's rules? So you have the maximum of 10 minutes.
Okay, I won't need anywhere near that much time. I believe I have just one final question, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Which is, so therefore, Treasurer Brasser, what I'm asking myself now is, we're already taking care of moving this money around, as you have described. You suggested somehow that there would be more clarity in government if we established this new reserve fund. I'm sorry to say that in our discussion so far, I personally have not been receiving any additional clarity. So I'm wondering, what exactly is it that we will get if we establish this fund that we don't have now?
Again, the treasurer is queried.
Well, in articles, I'm going to refer you to the school articles 3 and 4 again, because the body actually voted how much fund balance to use for the school and how much money to transfer from that reserve fund. Prior to that, there was no vote from the taxpayer. So the taxpayer did not really know it was being used, unless they read the report and understood it.
One further question, Mr. Vernon?
Yes. Well, you see, Treasurer Brasser, what you've done several times here is we are discussing a reserve fund for the town, not for the school. But a large part of your explanation has been somehow explaining school finances and hoping that we will understand how we transfer that knowledge to the affairs of the town. Now, personally, I simply do not understand. I wish you would restrict yourself to the affairs of the town and tell us what this reserve fund for the town of, what this additional reserve fund for the town of Vernon is going to do for us, in addition to what we're already doing.
Again, if you wish, you are asked the question.
What it will allow is the taxpayer to have a say in the decision of what happens with fund balance money.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ron has been recognized next. She had her hand up for most of the last few minutes. And then Mr. Ball after that.
I'm afraid I'm going to ask the exact same question, but I'm going to refer to page 11. Emergency Capital Reserve Fund. What is the difference between what you're trying to have us create and that?
Again, the treasurer is queried.
Well, this fund is designated, as you can see, for the purposes of providing funds for emergencies. So that is, all of these funds that you see are reserve funds here. They each have a special purpose. So the purpose of this reserve fund would be to commit fund balance money.
Further discussion on the article, Mr. Ball.
Mike Ball. What Vermont League of Cities and Towns tries to do is to standardize recommendations that they provide both to the legislature and to individual towns. We as a town will go out to the SCD. They standardize, they vet what they tell people so that they give good, quality, legal answers. And what the LCP is trying to say is for towns to establish, both on the school and on the town side, the reserve fund. And it gives more control to us as the taxpayers. So this is a good thing for us right now. And I would strongly urge you to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion, Article 35. All right, seeing none, the motion is that the town pursuant to 24 VSA subsection 2804 establish a reserve fund under the control and direction of the select board for the purpose of operating the town. All those in favor of Article 35 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You have passed Article 35. We move to Article 36 to see if the town pursuant to 24 VSA subsection 2804 will deposit into the newly established reserve fund the amount of $50,000 from the year-end June 30th, 2012 unreserved and undesignated fund balance for the purpose of operating the town. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator?
Mrs. O'Donnell.
I move that the town pursuant to 24 VSA 2804 deposit into the newly established reserve fund the amount of $50,000 for the year end June 30th, 2012, unreserved and undesignated fund balance for the purpose of operating the town.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded that the town pursuant to 24 VSA subsection 2804 deposit into the newly established reserve fund the amount of $50,000 from the year-end June 30th, 2012, unreserved and undesignated fund balance for the purpose of operating the town. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none. All those in favor of Article 36 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You passed Article 36. Article 37 having been disposed of earlier, we move to Article 38 to see if the town will authorize payment of real and personal property taxes to the town treasurer without discounts in 2 installments, setting the due dates as September 24th, 2013 and February 18th of 2014. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
I move that the town authorize payment of real and personal property taxes to the town treasurer without discounts in 2 installments, setting the due dates as September 24th, 2013 and February 18th, 2014.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, the town authorized payment of real estate and personal property taxes to its town treasurer without discounts in 2 installments, setting the due dates as September 24th, 2013 and February 18th, 2014. Discussion on the motion. Mr. Farrell.
Mr. Moderator, I have just one question. I don't know to whom it should be addressed, perhaps the treasurer, perhaps the board. We currently collect taxes property taxes in 2 installments. I am aware that other towns collect them in in different numbers of installments, such as 3 or 4. And I'm wondering, what is the reason that we choose to do it in 2 installments as opposed to some other number?
The select board and/or the town treasurer is queried. Ms. Grasser.
Well, if you recall, we used to collect once a year in October, and it just got to be too burdensome, and our choice was not to go beyond that to like a 4 installment plan at first. We went to just a 2 installment. I don't think there was any real discussion about whether we should go to more than that. It was just, we thought it would be easier for people to make 2 payments at the time.
Further discussion on Article number 38. Seeing none, the motion is that the town authorize payment of real and personal property taxes to the town treasurer without discounts in 2 installments, setting the due dates as September 24th, 2013, and February 18th, 2014. All those in favor of Article 38 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. You pass Article 38. We go back to the item tabled last evening, Article 24, to see if the town will adopt the Town of Vernon Capital Plan Supplement, Vehicle and Equipment Replacement and Depreciation Guide as adopted by the Select Board. Is there a motion on the floor? Mrs. Howe. Or Mrs. O'Donnell?
Sorry, Mr. Moderator. As Martin said, we're getting older. I move that the town adopt the Town of Vernon Capital Plan Supplement, Vehicle and Equipment Replacement and Depreciation Guide as adopted by the Town of Vernon. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
You're welcome. Is there a second?
Second.
And I think I've aged appreciably during this town meeting. Again, the motion is that the Town of Vernon adopt the Town of Vernon Capital Plan Supplement, Vehicle and Equipment Replacement and Depreciation Guide as adopted by the Vernon Select Board. Discussion on motion. Mr. Ball.
I appreciate the intent of the supplement. I think, though, that they may be a little misguided. And the reason is, what's happening is, in today's day and age, in the design of vehicles, and the types of materials that are being used, and the engine compartments themselves. And the reason why is, let me just tell you a little story. Most people know that I'm on the fire department and I'm an EMT. I had a Ford Escape. The car would sit, especially in the wintertime when I was on scene, the car would be idling in order to keep all my equipment inside warm, like I've got sitting over there right now, to keep it warm. What happened is that the design, say, especially Ford, is using coil over plug, which is with the coils, instead of being one coil, like when Bob and I got grease on our fingernails when we were probably like 11 years old. There was one coil. Now there's a coil for each plug. And the location of that coil, because of the heat of the engine as it's sitting idling, ages the plastic. Then the plastic cracks. I was trying to keep my Escape, but I wanted to keep it, and I was keeping it up, and I put a lot of money into it. I wanted to keep it for a long period of time. So we turned around and we went on vacation. And while we were in Maine, 3 out of the 6 coils cracked, and it was damp. So then the car started running rough, and I started dumping gasoline down into the exhaust, and it burned up all my catalytic converters. And it was going to cost me $4,000 to fix the car. I figured when everything was said and done, because of the amount of money that I put into maintenance, I put in $1,500 on top of that, and probably lost $5,000 when I went to trade it in. So it isn't just about mileage. It's also about how long the car sits idling. And the thing about it is, we haven't been keeping track of the amount of time that cars have been sitting, the police cars have been sitting idling. I don't believe that we have hour meters on them. And so what happens is, the fact is that it's only based on mileage, which this looks to be right now, as well as the amount of money we're putting into service. The loss of the catalytic converters is a cataclysmic event, which ends up, you end up having to put $4,000 to $6,000 into the car, because if you keep it too long, and it dies out here.
Thank you, Mr. Ball, for the discussion. Article number 24, in the back of the room, Mr. Andrews.
David Andrews. This is the first I've seen this evening, and I've got a couple questions on it. My understanding is, according to the town report, the capital plan is only for items that start with a replacement value of $10,000 or more. If you look at the bottom of page 2, refers to category F as in Foxtrot. This category consists of light equipment, weed eater, chainsaws, cement saws, pumps, generators, and other small hand-operated equipment. It sounds as though we're changing the intent of the capital plan, because the capital plan isn't for items that are less than $10,000. This is. I'd like somebody on the board to speak to that. Also, I noticed note as I calculated the town report. The current funding projections for the town capital plan are just shy of $3.5 million, of which around $1.5 million is the highway department, and a little more than that is the fire department. And I'd like to know who on the board discussed and got buy-in in regards to this supplemental plan from the highway and fire department.
The board has been queried. I believe I heard a couple of questions. Mrs. O'Donnell.
I'll start, and then if it's okay, I will hand it off to the chair of the Finance Committee. You know, for years, there's been nothing in the capital plan except for end of useful life. And no one has ever defined what end of useful life is. And this doesn't only talk about mileage. It talks about what the cost of repairs are, when it makes it reasonable to change vehicles or equipment, and it's for any department. It was actually a suggestion by the sheriff when the sheriff was filling in for the police chief when she was out sick, because all departments have a defined capital plan, and Vernon should have a defined when equipment gets replaced, and then there isn't any question by any departments when equipment should or shouldn't be replaced. So, and the Finance Committee chair, who the Finance Committee worked diligently on this, so she can take over.
The Finance Committee chair has been recognized. Mrs. Sherman.
I originally started with Sheriff Clark, and we had this model that we went through. We changed, it started with mileage, and we changed things to years because that's what our town had based things on. I sat down and with Dave Walker and spent quite a bit of time with him going over highway department items and on these and adjusted some figures according to what he had on here. And then we took what was on the capital plan as far as what the fire department was and put that on here. Does that answer your question?
Further discussion. I believe Mr. Andrews, if no one else is going to speak for a second time, we will recognize you and then recognize Mr. Sherman for a second time.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So as I'm reading this, there's a point system here, which as I'm seeing, as just an example, the fire department brush truck, which is a 74 Ford, is 39 years old. It's in poor condition, needing priority replacement, and yet the capital plan funding projections still have the brush truck out for 2017, 2018. So if I'm getting this right, and I understand you can't change the capital plan unless this document is approved, but there'd be some significant changes to the funding projections, not the least of which is going to be another $40,000 right away just for the brush truck. Am I reading that right?
The select board is queried, or the head of the Finance Committee.
Where are you? This is the brush truck, page 15, am I correct, Dave? Page 15?
You sure we are getting an answer here?
All right, you have the brush truck. Now I'm not following where you are.
Okay. If I'm reading this correct, there's 1 point given for every year of chronological age. That's at the top of attachment D, point range detail for sedans, SUVs, and trucks of 1 ton or less, which is the brush truck. The brush truck, the beautiful brush truck, was in 1974. I was still in junior high. 1974. So it's 39 years old. So by the guideline there, it's considered in need of priority replacement. So that would mean the capital plan, if this was approved, it had to be revised, and we move it from 2017, 2018 up. My question is on a larger scale, and that's what's the impact to the capital plan projections once this is implemented?
This is a guide.
Further
Guidelines.
discussion, Ms. Sherlin?
This is a guide in replacement.
All right, Mr.
The vehicle and equipment replacement and depreciation guide into getting to that replacement figure, into that replacement need.
All right, thank you. Mrs. O'Donnell?
There's nothing in this document that says if it's 1974, and by the way, I was out of high school and in college, so thank you very much. There's nothing in this document that says we have to replace it at that time. It's a guide as to when things should be replaced. So future boards, future finance committees, no, there's never been any definition of end of useful life. But there's been a huge conversation about end of useful life, and no one knows what end of useful life is. So these are guidelines. You don't have to replace it, just like right now, you don't have to replace a vehicle. It's at 30,000 miles, and the capital plan says after 30,000 miles. So.
Thank you. Mr. Thurman, we'll recognize you for a second time.
First, point of order, Mr. Moderator. As far as I know, I have not yet spoken to this motion, and this would be my first time speaking.
I do stand corrected. My brain is not what it was this morning when I woke up.
Mine isn't either. In fact, it hasn't been for a while. Oh, wow. I have a few questions, but first I know a couple of things. I know that the chairwoman of the Finance Committee mentions that she has spent considerable time in discussions with Mr. Walker. On the other hand, I remarked on Mr. Andrews stating, as a prominent member of the Vernon Fire Department, that he is seeing this for the first time this evening. Now, it certainly is an excellent idea to have something like this, but it wants to be very precise because it assigns numbers to things. But actually, it's going to need very precise language as well, or we're going to be arguing about this at least as much as we have been arguing about what we had before this was proposed. Now, I guess I would like to pose 2 or 3 questions. I shall be very brief here, but something I'm wondering is, this I believe would be a query to the Finance Committee. What you were talking about here concerning vehicle replacement in the business world is known as fleet management. I would like to know whether any member of the committee has any professional expertise or background in fleet management, or whether you have consulted any experts in this field.
All right, the Finance Committee's query. Ms. Sherlin, you will have the floor.
We had a previous member on the committee, because of his work schedule and family commitments, that just recently resigned, that has over 20 years in the vehicle industry.
All right, Mr. Thurman, you will have a couple of questions. We recognize you again, sir.
Well, of course, I'm frankly unclear as to what 20 years of experience in the vehicle industry means, because I think that could be anything from manufacturing them to repairing them. I was referring to something very specific, which is organizations that own large fleets have people who very precisely look at the questions that we're addressing here. Now, I want to emphasize that it seems to me that this is an excellent beginning and it is something that we should do. But I also feel that at this time it is incomplete. I'm going to give a few examples. One is it was suggested by Sheriff Clark when he was interim chief of police here. Now, when Sheriff Clark was interim chief of police here, he said, this is from the select board meeting minutes of November 19, 2012. Quote, in his fleet, he keeps cruisers for 5 or 6 years, and after that, if still in use, it is a detail car only. He feels that 9 years is too long to wait to replace cruisers, unquote. Now, I'm going to suggest that Sheriff Clark probably is an expert in the management of a fleet of police vehicles, and yet on the first page here, under category A, we see that the targeted cycle is 9 years. Now, I'm going to briefly mention just a few omissions that I noticed in this document here and there, and I'm looking for inconsistencies. I've written many things like this in the past, and I know that one way you check them is you make sure you have always covered the same points in the same language when you're talking about the same thing. Okay, I'm looking on the first page there, category A. This category consists of the police department's patrol car program, which is used primarily in dealing with the public. Now, many of the other items refer to maintenance costs and indicate when the vehicle should be replaced based on maintenance costs. That item is missing from category A. Now, and to give you an idea of what I mean, category B underneath. These vehicles should not be replaced earlier than 12 years, provided the maintenance cost is considerably higher than vehicles of the same type. I believe they mean because they say elsewhere, or provided that the maintenance cost, or perhaps unless the maintenance cost is considerably higher than vehicles of the same type. But we have some very carefully defined numbers elsewhere, but maintenance cost considerably higher. We have no idea what this is, and of course each of us will have a different opinion of what that is. Now this applies to a number of the items here, so I won't go over that again concerning the imprecision of what does it mean that maintenance cost is considerably higher. I'm now looking on the second page of category C1. This category consists of fire trucks that are used to serve the public on a day-to-day basis. Fire trucks will be considered for refurbishment prior to being considered for replacement. Now, as we mentioned, for most of the other categories, we have some criterion for replacement. Here, that is missing. Now, I'll be very brief. I just want to go over one or two more of these. On the third page, which is headed Attachment A, item number 2 there at the bottom, major deferrable expenses should not be made when a vehicle is in the final 6 months of its retention cycle. An interesting question is, why would you choose 6 months as opposed to some other number of months? It seems to be quite arbitrary. Pardon me, I have to put this thing down in order to flip it over. I'll mention just one or two other points where I feel this is currently incomplete and therefore stands as a draft. I'm now on attachment D, point range detail for sedans, SUVs, trucks, 1 ton and less. I'm looking a second group up from the bottom where it says maintenance and repair costs, M&R costs. 1 point, maintenance costs are less than or equal to 20% of replacement costs. I would assume that in every case where this is mentioned, what you're really referring to as cumulative maintenance costs. But unless this is stated, there will be an argument from time to time. Are we talking about cumulative costs, or are we talking about how much we paid the last time something was done? Now, below that, under condition, we have some items here where it says no visual damage or rust. That's a good point, be easily verified. But it says a good drivetrain. Now, I know some mechanics, and I think they might say some more about what exactly qualifies as a good drivetrain. I will just briefly check. Oh yes, there's one here which I'm now looking at attachment E. type of service, multiple duties on seasons. I have no idea what that means. In sum, Mr. Moderator, I'm suggesting that this is an excellent draft of a vehicle and equipment replacement and depreciation guide. Therefore, I move that the vehicle and equipment replacement and operation guide be tabled so that the Finance Committee can meet in public with stakeholders in Vernon's vehicles to complete what is actually a draft at this point. Now, I realize that I messed it up as I stated that. So I'm simply moving, I'm moving to table the, I've got it now. I'm moving to table the vehicle and equipment replacement and depreciation guide for further refinement and preparation of a final draft.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we table the article to a time certain or to
Next year's?
I wouldn't know the time. Mr. Moderator, I didn't say a time certain because I suspect that would depend on various people's availability. And, you know, as the usual thing with volunteers working together, things can take some time, but actually what's most important is that we get an excellent end result. We have an excellent start toward that result, but we're not there yet.
All right. Discussion on motion to table. In fact, check that. I just want to make sure that the motion to table, just want to double check and make sure that we It is debatable, so discussion on the question to table. All those in favor of tabling the motion? Oh, Mr. Gall, did not see your hand, sir.
I would suggest that we just vote this down and bring it back next year when it's been refined.
All right, we do have a motion to table on the floor. We have to consider that. All those in favor of tabling the article, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, nay?
Nay.
The nays appear to have it, the nays have it. And we're back to discussion of the main motion, Mr. Ball.
My call. I would, everybody should take a look at 4 Bravo on page 13. It's on the right-hand side.
Mike, we're not all engineers, they don't know what they're for,
Bravo being B because it sounds like E or C. Right. So 4, B is in Bravo.
Thank you.
So the, if you take a look at that, that really is the paragraph of the capital plan as originally established right now as it exists. The 5th line down, I would draw your attention to that. The Finance Committee and the department will mutually agree on the acceptability of the proposed end of useful life indicators. I would basically state that the document to which we are about ready to vote on is not an agreement with the capital plan. This should not be something that is basically a drafted document. It should be a living plan that is discussed between the Finance Committee and the department. And those two people will then come forward, the department head and the Finance Committee, all those people, would come forward and then talk to the select board. So I would really strongly urge everybody to defeat this and not bring it back next year because it disagrees with the capital plan as already established.
Further discussion on the article, Mrs. O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. As was said before, this is a suggestion. It's not always easy for the Finance Committee and the department to agree. And when they don't agree, what happens? There's no guidelines. And that's why Sheriff Clark suggested that we have guidelines. And that's why he made the extra effort to do the work in researching so we had guidelines. End of useful life is not a guideline. And it is, there's too many questions. Granted, we're not all engineers. We probably didn't draw the draft the way some people in here would have drawn it up. But there was a lot of research that was done into this, and there were a lot of towns this is their plan for how they judge when a piece of equipment needs to be replaced. And that's where that came from. So we're not reinventing the wheel. We're not doing something that has never been done before. We are trying to put in language something that is a guideline for the Finance Committee and for the Select Board and for the departments to go by. And at this time, can I call a question, Mr. Moderator?
I am going to allow that. Is there a second? Moved and seconded that we cease debate. All those in favor of ceasing debate, please say aye.
Division of the House.
Those opposed, nay.
Division of the House.
We have not even finished consideration yet, sir. Please allow us to get the yeas and nays before we get a division. But I will allow your request, given the nature of the question. All those in favor of approving the motion, please, to cease debate. I'll be ready for the rest of them. All those in favor of ceasing debate, please stand. And if the clerk could get the yeas and nays. It appears from my casual viewpoint that I believe a 2/3 has been achieved, and I will therefore declare debate ceased. And again, the motion is to whether the town will adopt the Town of Vernon Capital Plan Supplement Vehicle and Equipment Replacement and Depreciation Guide as adopted by the Vernon Select Board. All those in favor of the article.
Order, division of the House.
If a division can be called on the request of one voter, you've read your meeting guidelines, we should do that, sir. So, all those in favor of the article, please stand. Okay, please be seated. All those against the motion, please stand. Listen now to the result of your vote on Article 24. Those voting yes, 23. Those voting no, 30. I declare the article defeated. We move to Article 39, other business that may lawfully come before said meeting. By prior arrangement, for the purposes of a couple of presentations, I'd like to recognize Mrs. O'Donnell and Mrs. Howe from the Select Board. For me?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. As you all know, we've come to an era here in Vernon. Martha Dunkley, who has served this town for 47 years, is retiring after today. She didn't come to town meeting tonight, and I think it's probably because she knew we were going to do something. So we're going to honor her anyway and ask Jeff to please, is Mr. Duncan still here? Oh, he changed seats so he confused me. We're going to ask Mr. Duncan to please give her this for us when we get home with a hug from all of us and a deep gratitude for all of her years of service to this town. So thank her for us. And as you all know, tonight is Sandy's last night as our town clerk. She's been a mentor to many of us. Anytime you walked into the town office, you always get a smile, a kind word. No matter how annoying you were, Sandy never let you know. You could ask a million questions, and she was always there to answer them. She has worked in this office with integrity, honesty, character, professionalism, and it's been an honor to have gotten to know her and to be able to call her friend. We are going to really find a big boy, and that's not against anybody who comes into that office, but Sandy is a unique person, and we're all going to miss her. So please join me in thanking her for all of her years of service.
All right, again, Article 39, other business as may lawfully come before said meeting. Mr. Ball, microphone, please. Okay.
I don't see any flowers coming out for Bob, and I know that he's not a flower type guy.
He didn't want us to embarrass him. It's not to embarrass him.
Well, all I'm going to say is the fact is that I know what he's gone through. I know what it takes. He's put a lot of effort into it, and I think he brought a lot of decorum to the board, and I think he really deserves our respect. Thank you.
Further discussion under Article 39, other business. And seeing none for, if not her last official act, one of her last official acts, our outgoing town clerk will read the results of today's elections. Sandy, please.
This is not so funny. Okay. Number one lecture, I hate write-ins. We had over 100, that's why it took us so long to count. We have the world's greatest ballot counters, and they are, you just can't match them. But here's the results. Timothy Arsenal, for moderator, 428 votes. I declare Tim the winner. By the way, we had 27% voter turnout. Town and Town School District Clerk, Matthew Coombs, 81 votes, Susan Miller, 246, and Mary Lynn Sherlin, 103. I declare Susan Miller the winner. Selectmen for 3 years, Patricia Donald, 340. I declare Patricia the winner. Selectmen 2 year, Janet Rasmussen, 218. Joshua Unruh, 177. I declare Janet the winner. Auditor. According to 17 BSA 2682C, in order to win by a write-in, you have to have either 30 votes or 1% of the registered voter of the town of Vernon. Since there are 1,664 registered voters, we didn't want to split anybody up, so someone had to get a minimum of 17 votes. For the auditor, Nancy Gasson got 25 write-in votes, and I declare Nancy Gasson as our new auditor. For the lister, Carol Hammond got 388 votes. I declare Carol the winner. For delinquent tax collector, Marilyn Sherman got 238 votes. Cindy Turley got 169 votes. I declare Mary Lynn the winner. For first constable, Peter Crossman got 424 votes. I declare Peter Crossman the winner. For second constable, Scott Lane got 393 votes. I declare Scott the winner. Town agent, grand juror, nobody got 17 votes. But we have a lot of write-ins. So there are no winners. And according to 17 VSA 2682D, the select board is charged with appointing someone to that position. If you are interested, I suggest you contact the select board. If not, they'll contact you. I can do that tonight, right? School director, 3 years, Walter Grow, 343 votes. I declare Walter the winner. School director, 2 years, Regina Dyer got 379 votes. I declare Regina the winner. School district moderator, Timothy Arsenault, got 423 votes. I declare Tim the winner. The school vote was quite interesting. Section 3A, the big number. Yes was 267, no was 170. It carried. 3B, the smaller number. Yes was 228, no was 204. The budget passed for the school. Thank you for being a great town, and I wish Susan the best.
Anything further under Article 39, other business? If not, Mrs. Harris, could you please offer a motion to adjourn?
I so moved.
Seconded?
Seconded.
All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay.